Is college worth it in 2024? Many young adults find themselves asking this question lately. Perhaps you're one of them. Can't say I blame you. When one considers the cost of attending 4 years of college, interest rates on student loans, and job market uncertainties, it only makes sense to wonder if getting a college degree is worth it anymore. Alternatively, more and more people are realizing that some people without degrees are doing just fine. Many of those working in the construction trades, for instance, are making a fair bit of money without getting a degree at all, making some pretty great wages while avoiding student loan debt altogether. Sound interesting? My name is Patrick, and in this video, we'll be talking about whether or not a college degree is worth it in 2024. We'll dive deep into what the career forecast looks like for both college graduates and tradespeople alike. We'll also cover some of the pros and cons of pursuing a career in the trades, with some of my own experiences working in bridge and highway construction as a laborer, as well as a construction project manager, mixed in. We'll first kick things off by watching a viral video from a couple of years ago that's been making its rounds again on social media.
Okay, I'm gonna let y'all in on something that I feel like is really under talked about, and it should be talked about more because I would have never known this. So everyone pushes college, and I went to college. I have a master's degree. I make very good money for my age. My husband did not go to college, and I've talked about this on here before, and I don't think you understand. I don't think you understand it. So I'm gonna throw it into perspective for you, and I say it not to brag, but to hopefully help any of you. I have a college degree. He has a high school diploma. He went to trade school right after high school. He got his certificates and everything. And here we go. So this past July, he had already brought home more than my gross salary this year. Come December, he will have quadrupled my salary. Quadrupled it. If he decides to pick up overtime on a weekend, a 2-day weekend, if he picks up overtime, he brings home that weekend, just in those 2 days, more than I make in a 2-week check. I have a master's degree. He has a high school diploma. So that reason right there is why I will not push college on anyone. If you think that college is not for you and you want to try a trade school, obviously look into it, see if you think that you have what it takes. And then 100% do it. Do it. I don't think that enough people are talking about this. And it is 100% worth it if you stick with it. He's been doing it for 8 years, so obviously he has made his way up the ladder. But if he leaves his job today, 100% guarantee he will make the exact same amount of money wherever else he decides to go. I cannot stress it enough. I can't stress it enough. I am so jealous. He doesn't have student debt. Nothing. And he's quadrupling my salary in 1 year.
The woman who posted this video touched upon several key things that everyone should consider before making a decision to enroll in college, whether they're interested in a career in the trades or not. She first mentions the amount of time her degrees took to get. Given that she has a master's degree, she probably spent between 5 and 6 years in college overall. On the other hand, she mentions that her husband began training in the trades directly after high school. A second topic she talks about is her salary in comparison to her husband's. Although she doesn't say how much she makes, she alludes to the fact that her salary is considered good for her age. Her husband, on the other hand, was allegedly scheduled to make 4 times as much as her by the end of the year. Not only is that a substantial difference in income, it's amplified even more when one considers the cost of college. Unless you're able to pay for college out of pocket or with scholarships, you'll need to take out loans to finance the cost. This means that a fair portion, or even 100% of your college costs, will be paid off for several years after graduation. Although getting started in the trades isn't completely free, it costs substantially less money than what college costs. More on that later. The final point she makes is that her husband has an in-demand skill. According to her, he can leave his job today and find another job very quickly, all while making the same amount of money, regardless of where he goes. This alludes to the fact that many trades have consistent work to do, and therefore at least some form of income security. We'll get more into that shortly as well. While this video provides a detailed look into the paths of a college graduate and someone working in the trades, it's only about 2 people. Are these experiences true for everyone across the board? Is a career in the trades really so much better than a career for someone with a college degree? Let's turn to the data. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, approximately 3.3 million new jobs are expected through 2032, just in the US alone, for positions that require a bachelor's degree. This figure represents only new jobs. There will be even more jobs available when one considers job openings that will be created as older employees retire. Meanwhile, jobs requiring a master's degree are slated to grow by 500,000 each year, and occupations such as lawyers and nurse practitioners are expected to have the lion's share of the growth. When we combine bachelor's and master's degrees, nearly 4 million new jobs are expected each year over the next several years. If we're going by this data, millions of college graduates will have use for their degrees. Sounds promising? Well, that depends. Although this is a large figure, the data suggests that these expected jobs are concentrated in specific industries. Said another way, not everyone who gets a degree can expect robust job opportunities in their field of study. When deciding if a college degree is right for you, it's extremely important for you to consider the future demand for the skill sets that your degree will give you. After all, a degree is only as useful as the opportunities it'll grant you once you have it. Now that we've covered the expected job growth for college graduates, let's take a look at some job market trends in the construction industry. According to abc.org, the construction industry had a shortage of 546,000 jobs in 2023. When one considers the fact that construction employment is already at a 20-year high, it becomes increasingly clear that there's definitely demand for skilled workers in the trades. And more to the point, ABC outlines that very few young workers have been entering the trades in recent years. Nearly 1 in 4 people working in the trades is over the age of 55. This means that as the more senior workers continue to retire, the deficit of workers in the trades will get even larger than it is already. Out of those that have joined the construction industry over the past several years, nearly 40% work in a general laborer capacity, rather than practicing a specific trade. Skilled trades such as carpentry, plumbing, electrical, metalworking, and the like are at an even larger deficit when compared to the industry as a whole. Speaking of the construction industry as a whole, what size workforce are we even talking about? According to a survey performed by the BLS, there are approximately 8.5 million people in America working in the construction industry in some form. When we consider that 160 million Americans were surveyed, those working in construction make up only 5% of the total workforce. Given that the construction industry had a shortage of 546,000 jobs last year alone, the total construction industry will need to increase by 6% just to meet demands, which doesn't even factor in those senior workers retiring over the next several years. If approximately 1 in 4 of those 8 million construction workers retire over the next 10 years, there will be about 200,000 job openings in construction each year on average just to replace those people retiring. In short, there is a huge demand for construction workers over the next decade, especially for those who practice a skilled trade. So far, we've talked about the future demand in the workforce for both college graduates and tradespeople alike, and the good news is that both are slated to have opportunities over the next 10 years. We've clarified that there's still demand in the workforce for people with college degrees, although they're concentrated in certain sections of the job market. We've also clarified that skilled labor in particular will be in demand over the next several years as well. But we've yet to dive into a very important variable in this whole equation, and that is pay. Let's start with pay in the construction industry. According to Statista, the average hourly earnings for non-supervisory roles in construction was $32.31 as of 2022. Assuming 40 hours a week across 50 weeks per year, this makes the average yearly salary approximately $64,620 for construction workers nationwide. Given that this figure is up over 50% since 2006, one can safely assume that the average pay is even higher in 2024. It's worth noting that this hourly wage reflects both unskilled and skilled work combined, so one can reasonably infer that skilled labor gets paid a fair bit more than the average. We'll get into that a little more in a bit, but what about pay for college graduates? The average starting salary for college graduates with a bachelor's degree is around $58,900 per year, with some graduates earning more and others less. Assuming 3% raises per year, it'll be a couple of years after graduation before the average pay for a college graduate catches up to the average pay for a worker in construction. Although construction workers make a steady wage, college graduates have the opportunity for larger increases in pay as they gain years of seniority and more responsibilities. A large portion of workers in construction, on the other hand, can expect a good but fairly flat wage unless they work more hours or gain a specialty skill in that time. All that is to say that college graduates on average are more likely to have salaries that jump by leaps and bounds as they gain promotions. But there is, of course, a caveat. Assuming a college graduate with a bachelor's degree began their studies immediately after high school, they won't begin earning that salary until age 22 or 23 after graduating. Workers in the trades, on the other hand, can begin their careers immediately after high school at age 18, which gives them several years of a head start. Sure, a tradesperson may start with a lower salary, but they'll generally be making more money sooner than a college graduate. Those working in the trades will need to spend some money on things like tools, equipment, supplies, and possibly some certifications as they start their careers. But like we said earlier, workers in the trades do not need to shoulder college costs. Speaking of which, if a college student takes out loans to get their degree, how much will that ultimately cost them? Let's look at the data. According to educationdata.org, the average borrower takes out approximately $40,000 in student loans to pay for their education. Average private student loan holders, on the other hand, borrow approximately $55,000 to pay for their schooling. On a side note, the total outstanding student loan balance is over $1.7 trillion. That is a truly staggering number. With that in mind, it's no surprise that 50% of borrowers, on average, still owe over $20,000 20 years after they began their schooling. That's approaching the amount of time it takes to pay off a mortgage on a home. And how does $40,000 in student loans translate into a monthly payment? Let's find out. Let's say a student loan holder borrows $40,000 at an interest rate of 6.5%, and it takes them 10 years to pay off the entire loan. Given these criteria, that borrower will pay $454 a month over the course of 10 years in order to pay off the balance of that loan. That college graduate will pay $5,500 per year for the first 10 years of their career in order to pay off their debt, something a tradesperson will not have to do. And if we're being honest, we all know people who borrow more than $40,000 to pay for their college education. If a student borrows $100,000 to pay for their education, which equates to $25,000 per year, they'll be paying north of $1,100 per month for 10 years when we keep interest rates and loan terms the same. That equates to over $13,000 they'll pay per year for 10 years to totally satisfy their loan. Which brings us to a very important point. Perhaps the most important point in this entire video. Many won't like it, but it's unfortunately true. Whether or not a college degree is worth it can largely be boiled down to the price one has to pay in order to obtain it. It simply doesn't make financial sense to take out loans for a degree that literally will not pay you back. Now that we've gone over some figures, you may be questioning a part of the TikTok video we watched earlier. The woman mentions that her husband was slated to make around 4 times as much as she would by year's end. Given the salary figures we looked at for both college graduates and tradespeople alike, how is that possible? I believe another thing she says gives us a clue. Given that she said her husband could make the exact same amount of money for the work he does, working for another company, there's a very good chance that he's either in a union or making prevailing wage. Prevailing wage and union labor rates are most commonly found on public or government-funded projects, but can often be found on commercial construction projects as well. Prevailing wage is sort of like a minimum wage for trades, and is often determined by the city and state in which the project is taking place. In the greater New York City area, for example, full-fledged carpenter mechanics will be paid nearly $60 an hour, with additional benefits on top of that, such as sick time, insurance, healthcare, retirement, and so on. Prevailing wage and union workers are commonly paid time and a half for overtime hours, which usually includes weekend work or hours worked over 8 hours in any given day. If a carpenter that's paid this wage works 48 hours a week for 50 weeks out of the year, they will make north of $150,000 a year, including overtime, before taxes. Depending on how much money the woman in the video makes, as well as how many hours her husband works, her estimation for the salary ratio is feasible under the right circumstances, especially if her husband works a lot of overtime. It's worth noting that tradespeople in unions or on prevailing wage projects go through a few years of apprenticeship, which is akin to training, at the start of their careers. Hence, they are paid on an escalating scale for the first few years of employment. Regardless, if one is able to work in a union or on prevailing wage projects, making less for a few years as an apprentice is well worth it. That's all well and good, you may be saying, but how much construction work like this is scheduled to happen over the next several years? Over the next 3 to 4 years, the federal government plans to spend $500 billion on projects under the infrastructure bill. This bill includes upgrades to America's roads, bridges, power grid, railroads, communication systems, and so on. As you can see on screen, Billions will be spent in each of these categories, meaning there should be plenty of public and government-sponsored construction projects all across America over the next few years, giving plenty of workers in the trades the opportunity to ride the wave in that time. Now, before I go over some of the pros and cons of life in the trades, let's do a brief recap of what we've discussed so far. Jobs for both college graduates and tradespeople alike are scheduled to grow over the next several years. However, job projections for college graduates are concentrated in specific areas of focus. While there's currently a shortage of workers across the construction sector, the biggest deficits are in the skilled trades specifically. In addition to new job growth, even more positions will open up due to existing workers retiring. Average wages for construction workers are slightly higher than the average starting salaries of college graduates. Construction wages tend to increase steadily over time, but stay fairly consistent, whereas people with bachelor's and master's degrees have more opportunities to move up the ladder, so to speak, when one considers promotions and additional responsibilities. This, of course, goes hand in hand with the potential for making more money. However, college degrees are more expensive to pay off, and the effect of this is further felt by college graduates due to not entering the workforce until their early 20s. Those working in the trades can get started for far less money, giving them a big head start by several years, since they can begin their careers as early as 18 years old. And whether or not a college degree is worth it from a financial perspective is completely dependent on the demand for that particular skill set, as well as how much those positions pay, and most importantly, how much it'll ultimately cost to get your degree. Now, don't get me wrong, people should pursue whatever career path truly calls to them, but it's worth really taking a hard look at whether or not you actually even need a degree to do that in the first place. And last but not least, those working in a union or on prevailing wage projects can make a considerable amount of money, much higher than even the average construction worker salary nationwide. This is especially true when we factor in things like overtime and supplemental benefits. And this segues nicely into our final chapter. What is life in the trades actually like? While completing my studies in civil engineering, I worked as a seasonal laborer doing emergency bridge and highway repairs, as well as working on larger infrastructure projects. I've also worked as a construction project manager for the past 14 years, so I feel I can give a fairly in-depth perspective on the topic. As you may have guessed, there are both good and bad aspects of working in the trades. Let's go through a few additional parts of trade life that we haven't covered already. Pro number 1, you're always paid for what you do. Construction jobs pay by the hour, not by a fixed salary. If a tradesman works more than 8 hours in a day or more than 5 days a week, they're paid overtime for each additional hour. This is not the case for salaried employees. When the 8th hour of the day is done, the tradesperson is either making overtime or going home. Con number 1, you must travel to where the work is. Due to the nature of emergency work, we'd sometimes travel 3 hours each way to get to a job. This type of life can lead to crazy commute times, sleeping in hotels, and inconsistent schedules from one day, week, or even month to the next. Pro number 2, tradespeople use their bodies to make a living. This is not to say that trade work doesn't require thinking, but physically working in the trades can keep one fit and healthy, provided you keep your diet and lifestyle in check as well. Believe me, after a long day of digging holes, setting beams, framing walls, or pouring concrete, the body gets plenty of exercise. Con number 2, which is kind of like the flip side of pro number 2. Workers in the trades are more likely to get injured on the job. Even while taking all the proper precautions, construction work can be very dangerous. Certainly more so than an office job. Some of the situations I've seen or heard about would boggle your mind. The odds of getting injured in certain circumstances can be very small, yet they still do happen. Construction work can lead to acute bodily harm as well as overuse injuries, so it's very important to have insurance and other contingencies in place in the event that you can't work. Believe me, jackhammering for several hours a day takes its toll on the body very quickly. Pro number 3, working for yourself as a skilled trade worker can be easier than other jobs. With the right skill set, tradesmen can often find side work in addition to their main job fairly easily. There are always people looking to have work done on their houses or businesses that need small projects done. And when your main product as a business is your skill set, you can make additional money or even run your own business, doing similar work to what you do for somebody else. There's often less need for office expenses and other overhead in comparison to other types of businesses. And con number 3, the elements play a major role in the life of a tradesperson. Unlike an office job where there's climate control and comforts, working in the trades can mean working in the heat, the cold, the rain, and so on in order to get the job done. For some trades, weather conditions can mean days, weeks, or even months of downtime until the weather permits work to continue. Between lack of comforts and inconsistency in schedule due to weather, this is an important factor to consider. And that wraps up our in-depth exploration into the career paths of college graduates and tradespeople alike. I hope you found this video helpful and informative, and that it helps you make the choice that's best for you. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a like and share it with someone you think would benefit. And for more content like this, please consider subscribing to stay in touch. Your support means everything, and I truly appreciate it. Now, how about you? Do you have any thoughts or comments on what we discussed today? Feel free to drop a comment below. Thanks for watching, and until next time, cheers.